Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Freaky299 and welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video. This time we're taking a look at an old build, my Moth Keeper Strand Hunter build. Now this is a build that came out kind of in Season of the Witch, and I have evolved upon it using this season's artifact mods, as well as just testing it out in the new content like Onslaught and Onslaught Legend mode. And I have to tell you, this Moth Keeper build just destroys. You have almost infinite ability regen, you're throwing out moth grenades all the time, you're getting void overshields, blinding things, and you just deal so much damage. The fluidity of this build is really something, and I have to say, with Prismatic on the horizon, I'm so excited for these kind of builds to come out more and more. Because you're stealing from Arc, you're stealing from Void, you're getting Speed Booster, you're getting Amplified, you're getting Woven Mail, you're getting all these different buffs, stacking them up together to just be a powerhouse. You can step into Legend Onslaught and just carry teams, no problem, because you're blinding things, you're blowing things up, you're unraveling the entire battlefield. It's truly just so much fun to play. So of course, with all my builds, there'll be a dim link in the description along with a picture at the end of the video. Let's just jump right into it, starting with the subclass. Starting off with the subclass, we have our Thread Runner and our Silk Strike Super. Now, the Silk Strike Super is fantastic. If you have yellow bars that are tanky, you spam your light attack, and then any enemies that are grouped around, you just go in with the heavy and clear them all out. This really shines in content like Onslaught because you just have so many waves of enemies coming after you, and you can just pop the super, clear them all out, spawn a bunch of orbs, and next thing you know, you got the super back so quickly just because of the way this build works. Now moving forward, we're also taking Marksman's Dodge. Now this is just because we already get our melee back so quickly, just because of its base ability and also just because of some of the mods we're running. Marksman Dodge allows us to dodge and reload our weapon, and I find this comes in huge handy whenever we have a sidearm and a barrier throws its barrier up and you need to quickly reload, or if you're just rocking a rocket launcher, shoot, dodge, and shoot again, and you can just nuke things down. Marksman Dodge is just so much fun, and plus it's also on a shorter cooldown than Gambler's Dodge. Next up, we also have our Threaded Spike, which is our melee. We throw our Rope Dart out, it'll bounce between all the enemies nearby, severing them, which also means that we have an easier chance of surviving. Sever, of course, reduces the amount of damage that enemies deal to us, which means we can survive a lot better in games like Onslaught, because enemies are constantly firing, and you can just throw a Threaded Spike out, and it will bounce around for a good 10 seconds, and you'll even forget about it before it comes back to you and you catch it. Threaded Spike, we can just throw it out so much, and whenever you're going into an engagement, whenever you're going into a battle, throw this thing so you can sever everything, take an enemy down, and spawn a tangle for the rest of our flow. Going on, we don't have to worry about the grenade because no matter what grenade we choose, it's being overridden by our moth grenades, which we'll cover when we actually are on our gauntlets. For our strand aspects, we're starting off with Whirling Maelstrom. It's going to give us 2 fragment slots, and it's going to make it so whenever we destroy a tangle, it will turn into a weaving tornado that unravels enemies and just deals constant damage. Now, Whirling Maelstrom is just so much fun because you can just take a tangle, throw it into a group of enemies, and it'll just shred them completely. And then if you're in harder content like Legend Onslaught, you get this on a yellow bar, it'll just chew through their health bar, unraveling them. If you're dealing damage alongside this Maelstrom, it just does even more damage because Unravel continuously procs the more damage that you're actually dealing. So Whirling Maelstrom, it's fantastic, and then we're also rocking Threaded Spectre, which whenever we use our class ability, our dodge, we leave behind a decoy that enemies will target first and foremost. Once the decoy is dealt enough damage, it explodes into a little threadlings that go and attack. Now, this is wonderful because whenever we're in hard content, whenever we're diving in, we can just decoy back, reload our weapon, and then make this strand clone, which honestly helps out so much. When you're in Onslaught and you have yellow bars that are just rushing towards your ADU, you can throw out a Threaded Spectre and it'll actually catch a lot of them. Invisible Vandals that usually just rush up, throw this out and it'll catch them and they'll get distracted, shoot it, and you just have that little extra time that you need. Now moving down to the fragments, we have Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants us Woven Mail, which is just a huge bonus to our damage reduction. It's what actually allows us to survive, especially in Legend Onslaught, when we're just dealing with so many enemies. Then we have Thread of Generation. Any damage we deal generates grenade energy depending on what source it is. This means that our Moth Keeper grenades just come back instantly, whether it's from our tangles chewing things up, whether it's through our weapons, or whether it's through our melee, our rope dart just bouncing everywhere. For our third fragment, we're grabbing Thread of Continuity. I just had to quickly change that because I was running a different kind of build. Thread of Continuity, this makes our Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects apply way longer for increased duration. Now, for certain things, it's only a second, but even that second and stuff like Onslaught really helps out a lot. And then especially if you're jumping into Grandmasters, this also can just give you that extra little bit of edge that you need Sever to apply and Unravel to apply. And then finally, we're rocking Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with a tangle grants us melee energy. This plus Whirling Maelstrom means we get our rope darts back so quickly, and when we get our rope dart back, it means we can just continuously throw it out, and because of our mods, we're also just fueling the rest of our ability regeneration. Now, that is going to do it for the abilities and the fragments. Moving on to the weapons. Now, starting with the weapons, for your primary weapon and our main exotic, we are using Exderis. Exderis is just fantastic. It's an arc grenade special launcher. It just fires out boomer shots that can just shred through enemies. You never need to reload. And then enemies that you defeat have a chance of spitting out moths, either an arc moth or a void moth. Arc moths will rush and just blind people, and then the void moths will come to you and your allies and will give you void overshields. And then plus, if you happen to get your hands on the actual catalyst, this also makes it that after enough defeats, it'll make us amplified and we'll get that speed booster bonus as well. Just wonderful to have, especially when you're just trying to run around going back and forth between the different waves. Now, for other weapons to rock with Exderis, you're really looking for a solid Strand primary weapon. There's things like Michael's Reverence and Rufus's Fury, which are from Root of Nightmares, but you also have some really good hand cannons like Round Robin, and it really doesn't matter. As long as you have a good Strand weapon that you like running, it'll work for this build. And then finally, for the heavy weapon, you also have a number of good heavies, like Circular Logic, which is a fantastic Strand LMG. And then you also have Semiotician, which is just a beautiful Strand rocket launcher that you can roll with Explosive Light and Field Prep. This causes it to have so much ammo, and when you're in hard content, having that extra ammo, having that Explosive Light, it means you can burst down champions with ease. So make sure to grab Semiotician before it goes away. It comes from Season of the Witch, and it's just wonderful. Now, that's going to do it for the weapons. Moving on to the artifact mods. Now, starting off with the artifact mod, in our first column, we grab 3 anti-champion mods that also grant the weapons overcharge, which is a 25% damage increase while we're in legend or higher content. For second column, we're grabbing Origin Perk Specialization 1, which overcharges the weapons with these origin traits and also improves the origin traits themselves. We're also grabbing From Whence You Came, which gives us a small increase to ability damage against Taken and Scorned combatants, which you do face a lot of in other pieces of content. For third column, we're grabbing Origin Perk Specialization 2, which also improves the benefits of these origin traits listed, as well as overcharges the weapons that they are. This allows us to pretty much use all the weapons from this year and get a bunch of overcharge, so we're always using a weapon, we're always receiving overcharge, and we never have to worry. And then also we're using Wished into Being, so while our super is nearly fully charged, ability final blows spawn extra orbs of power. This is really nice to have, especially if you're wearing some Season of Wish armor, which, depending on how you're rolling your armor, you probably do have on. For fourth column, we're grabbing Unraveling Orbs. Picking up an Orb of Power grants our Strand weapons Unraveling rounds. This is really nice for whatever primary Strand weapon we're using, as well as for our heavy, because Unraveling rounds Single firing weapons like hand cannons can just do a lot more damage because unraveling is just spreading out, taking out other enemies, and then also repeatedly attacking the enemy that they're on. Then going down, we're also grabbing overload rocket launchers, which does give us the overcharge to our rocket, and it overloads it as well, which just makes running builds a whole lot easier. And then finally, Dragon's Bite. Breaking a combatant's shield with Strand or Stasis weapon has a chance to suspend or freeze. This is just a little bonus, especially when you're just blowing stuff up with your rocket. And then finally, for 5th column, we're grabbing Horde Shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. We're always making targets unraveled with our Whirling Maelstrom, so we're always spawning a bunch of these threadlings everywhere. And then finally, Argent Ordnance. Firing a rocket launcher consumes 1 stack of armor charge, but grants increased damage and reload speed until you reload or stow your rocket launcher. Really nice, just some bonus damage to have on top of everything that we're rocking. That's going to do it for the artifact mod. Moving on to the armor mods themselves. Starting out with the helmet, we're rocking arc siphons, so when we're using Exteriors, we're actually spawning orbs of power. Exteriors actually has a pretty good ammo economy, allowing it to be pretty much our primary weapon. We're also using Ashes to Assets, which gains bonus super energy on grenade takedowns. This is really nice as we're throwing out moth grenades everywhere, and all those arc moths do a lot of damage and actually take down a lot of enemies, so extra super energy, which is great. And then Heavy Ammo Finder. Anytime we're dealing damage with our primary weapon, if you got a good Strand primary, then you usually are, it means we're dropping bonus heavy ammo, which is really nice to have, especially in harder content where it can matter a lot. Now, moving on to the stat distribution, of course we're focusing Resilience first for a 30% damage reduction at tier 10. Second, we want our Discipline also as high as possible so we can get a shorter cooldown on those moth grenades. And then finally, we're focusing Strength, just so our Rope Dart can go out a lot faster, as our Rope Dart feeds into our other abilities, so we don't actually need to worry about mobility that much. Onto the gauntlets, we have our exotic Mothkeeper wraps, which come with the exotic perk Winged Eclipse. Our grenade becomes a cage of loyal moths that release on impact and fly towards the nearest target or ally. If they reach a target, they detonate in a blinding explosion, and if they reach an ally, the moth grants your ally a void overshield. Now, these moths create depending on where they actually land. If you throw a moth grenade that's near enemies, it will usually turn into 2 arc moths. If you throw it down at your feet, it can sometimes turn into 2 void moths or 1 void moth and 1 arc. Most of the time you will see 1 void and 1 arc. Very rarely will you ever see it go into 2 void moths. Now, moving on to the mods themselves, we're grabbing firepower, so our grenade final blows actually spawn orbs of power. Really nice, as those arc moths are always going out. We're also grabbing Impact Induction, which causes damage with our powered melee to reduce our grenade cooldown. Very nice to have, as well as Bolstering Detonation, which does the same whenever we deal damage with our grenade for our class ability. Now, this is really nice as we get our grenade back fairly quickly just because our Rope Dart combo, and then whenever we're dealing damage with our grenades with our arc moths, we're getting our class ability back as well, which allows us just to dodge a lot more and just get into the fight. Down to the chest piece, we're always taking double resistance against whatever the active threat modifier is. So say in Onslaught there's arc threat, that means you're going to be rocking double arc resistance along with a single element resistance depending on what your preference is. A lot of the time void damage is very deadly, but so can solar depending on what actual faction you are facing. Just go whatever what feels best, but make sure to line up the threat modifier with a double resistance against it. Down to the boots, we're going to be taking a Strand weapon surge and an arc weapon surge. These are going to give us a damage increase whenever we have an armor charge, and this also just means that our Exteriors is getting an extra 10% bonus to damage, as well as whatever Strand weapon and heavy or primary we're using is also getting a bonus to damage. Really nice to have, as it really balances out. You really notice when you're focused more into Exteriors or focused more into your Strand weapon, and this just means you can use both of them a lot more easily with this build. Then of course we're always taking recuperation on our leg mod. This grants us a burst of health every time we pick up an orb of power, which is a lifesaver in a lot of situations. As your health is down, there's no void moth, and you see an orb of power, boom, you're back up and you're running. And down to the class item, we're taking bombers. Whenever we use our class ability, we're getting a little bit of grenade energy back. And then we're taking double Fonta restoration, so whenever we have an armor charge, we're getting a plus 50 into recovery, which whatever your recovery is at, that's going to help out a ton. And that is going to do it for the build. Now, this is one of my favorite builds that I made back in Season of the Witch, and I've updated it to just flow a lot better in this season's current sandbox. The final shape is approaching in less than 4 weeks, and Into the Light still has a lot of content that I'm sure you need to grind. Legend Onslaught can be a bit challenging, but with a build like this, you are sure to make it no issue for yourself and for anyone that you're running it with. Having the constant arc blind on everything, unraveling rounds going, it just means that in those maps like Vostok and Midtown, those close quarters are just completely swamped with all your threadlings, all your unraveling, all your moths. It's just a blast. And even in something like moth yards, you don't have a tough time because you just have so much control over the battlefield, as well as if you need that damage, you just pop out your heavy, blast away, or even just pull out Xderis and just dump your entire round and magazine into it. It's just a beautiful build that just has so much flexibility, and if you really want, you can even take it into Grandmaster Nightfalls and have no issue, because you just provide that much support for your team, as well as you just provide that much damage for yourself. It's just a wonderful build. If you need a picture of the full build, there's one on screen, as well as there's a dim link in the description below. Now, final shape's coming out in 3 weeks or less than 4 weeks, so be sure to grind out everything you need. I'll have tons of builds coming because Legend Onslaught, hey, you want to grind it out, you want those shiny weapons, because hey, I want those shiny weapons. And the faster you can get through those waves, the faster you can get to that 50 wave legend and just keep grinding, the easier it means that you get those shiny weapons that you truly want. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to hit a like if you enjoyed the build video and you just enjoyed the kind of content I make, as well as leave a subscribe if you haven't already, as I'm going to be pumping out tons more videos as we approach the final shape. It's getting very exciting, it's getting very hype, and you're not going to want to miss a single video because, hey, these builds are going to be rocking, and as soon as final shape comes out, ooh boy, I got plans for this game. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I've been FreakyDude99, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, everyone.